Matthew 14:1. At that time Herod the Tetrarch heard the reports about Jesus.
1절. 그때의 분봉왕 헤롯이 예수의 소문을 듣고
Matthew 14:2. And he said to his attendants, This is John the Baptist, he has risen from the dead. That is why miraculous powers are at work in him.
2절. 그 신하들에게 이르되 이는 세례 요한이라 그가 죽은 자 가운데서 살아났으니 그러므로 이런 능력이 그 속에서 역사하는도다 하더라.
Matthew 14:3. Now Herod had arrested John and bound him and put him in prison because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife.
3절. 전에 헤롯이 그 동생 빌립의 아내 헤로디아의 일로 요한을 잡아 결박하여 옥에 가두었으니.
Matthew 14:4. For John had been saying to him, It is not lawful for you to have her.
4절. 이는 요한이 헤롯에게 말하되 당신이 그 여자를 차지한 것이 옳지 않다 하였음이라.
Matthew 14:5. Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of the people, because they considered him a prophet.
5절. 헤롯이 요한을 죽이려 하되 무리가 그를 선지자로 여김으로 그들을 두려워하더니.
Matthew 14:6. On Herod's birthday the daughter of Herodias danced for them and pleased Herod so much.
6절. 마침 헤롯의 생일이 되어 헤로디아의 딸이 연석 가운데서 춤을 추어 헤롯을 기쁘게 하니.
Matthew 14:7. That he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked.
7절. 헤롯이 맹세로 그에게 무엇이든지 달라는 대로 주겠다고 약속하거늘.
Matthew 14:8. Prompted by her mother, she said, Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist.
8절. 그가 제 어머니의 시킴을 듣고 이르되 세례 요한의 머리를 소반에 얹어 여기서 내게 주소서 하니.
Matthew 14:9. The king was distressed, but because of his oaths and his dinner guests, he ordered that her request be granted.
9절. 왕이 근심하나 자기가 맹세한 것과 그 함께 앉은 사람들 때문에 주라 명하고.
Matthew 14:10. And had John beheaded in the prison.
10절. 사람을 보내어 옥에서 요한의 목을 베어.
Matthew 14:11. His head was brought in on a platter and given to the girl, who carried it to her mother.
11절. 그 머리를 소반에 얹어서 그 소녀에게 주니 그가 자기 어머니에게로 가져가니라.
Matthew 14:12. John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus.
12절. 요한의 제자들이 와서 시체를 가져다가 장사하고 가서 예수께 아뢰니라.
Matthew 14:13. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns.
13절. 예수께서 들으시고 배를 타고 떠나사 따로 빈들에 가시니 무리가 듣고 여러 고을로부터 걸어서 따라간지라.
Matthew 14:14. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick.
14절. 예수께서 나오사 큰 무리를 보시고 불쌍히 여기사 그 중에 있는 병자를 고쳐주시니라.
Matthew 14:15. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away, so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food.
15절. 저녁이 되매 제자들이 나와 이르되 이곳은 빈들이요 때도 이미 저물었으니 무리를 보내어 마을에 들어가 먹을 것을 사 먹게 하소서.
Matthew 14:16. Jesus replied, They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat.
16절. 예수께서 이르시되 갈 것 없다. 너희가 먹을 것을 주라.
Matthew 14:17. We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they answered.
17절 제자들이 이르되 여기 우리에게 있는 것은 떡 5개와 물고기 2마리뿐이니이다.
Matthew 14:18. Bring them here to me, he said.
18절 이르시되 그것을 내게 가져오라 하시고.
Matthew 14:19. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people.
19절 무리를 명하여 잔디 위에 앉히시고 떡 5개와 물고기 2마리를 가지사 하늘을 우러러 축사하시고 떡을 떼어 제자들에게 주심에 제자들이 무리에게 주니.
Matthew 14:20. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over.
20절 다 배불리 먹고 남은 조각을 12바구니에 차게 거두었으며.
Matthew 14:21. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children.
21절 먹은 사람은 여자와 어린이 외에 5,000명이나 되었더라.
Matthew 14:22. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd.
22절 예수께서 즉시 제자들을 재촉하사 자기가 무리를 보내는 동안에 배를 타고 앞서 건너편으로 가게 하시고.
Matthew 14:23. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone.
23절 무리를 보내신 후에 기도하러 따로 산에 올라가시니라 저물매 거기 혼자 계시더니.
Matthew 14:24. But the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it.
24절 배가 이미 육지에서 술이나 떠나서 바람이 거스름으로 물결로 말미암아 고난을 당하더라.
Matthew 14:25. During the 4th watch of the night Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake.
25절 밤 사경에 예수께서 바다 위로 걸어서 제자들에게 오시니.
Matthew 14:26. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear.
26절 제자들이 그가 바다 위로 걸어오심을 보고 놀라 유령이라 하며 무서워하여 소리 지르거늘.
Matthew 14:27. But Jesus immediately said to them, Take courage. It is I, don't be afraid.
27절 예수께서 즉시 이르시되 안심하라 나니 두려워하지 말라.
Matthew 14:28. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water.
28절 베드로가 대답하여 이르되 주여 만일 주님이시거든 나를 명하사 물 위로 오라 하소서 하니.
Matthew 14:29. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water and came toward Jesus.
29절 오라 하시니 베드로가 배에서 내려 물 위로 걸어서 예수께로 가되.
Matthew 14:30. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and, beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me.
30절 바람을 보고 무서워 빠져가는지라 소리 질러 이르되 주여 나를 구원하소서 하니.
Matthew 14:31. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt?
31절 예수께서 즉시 손을 내밀어 그를 붙잡으시며 이르시되 믿음이 작은 자여 왜 의심하였느냐 하시고.
Matthew 14:32. And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down.
32절 배에 함께 오르매 바람이 그치는지라.
Matthew 14:33. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, Truly you are the Son of God.
33절 배에 있는 사람들이 예수께 절하며 이르되 진실로 하나님의 아들이로소이다 하더라.
Matthew 14:34. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret.
34절 그들이 건너가 게네사렛 땅에 이르니.
Matthew 14:35. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him.
35절 그곳 사람들이 예수이신 줄을 알고 그 근방에 두루 통제하여 모든 병든 자를 예수께 데리고 와서.
Matthew 14:36. And begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed.
36절 다만 예수의 옷자락이라도 손을 대게 하시기를 간구하니 손을 대는 자는 다 나음을 얻으니라.